Wait, so you're telling me you've never seen a scary anime for Halloween before?
Basically, yeah. I don't really think anime can be scary.
Really? What do you mean?
I guess in most cases they just can't be realistic enough compared to movies and TV shows.
Oh, so you mean like live action horror shows and stuff?
Yeah, those have a much easier time triggering a response as opposed to drawn images.
Yeah, but isn't that the whole point? Like, you're meant to have a suspension of disbelief whenever you watch anything that's meant to be scary.
Kind of. But in anime, you still have an extra stopping block that literally prevents you from reaching that point of disbelief.
Alright, I think I understand what you mean, but let me change the question a little bit then. What about if I was talking about watching a show that really wanted to put me on edge, like work on the anxiety and nervous part when watching it? How about that kind of show?
Well, that's something else entirely. I think suspense in anime can work because feeling empathy for fictional characters in that situation is something much easier to do.
Okay, so not that different the wording, but you're basically saying that you think suspense, like thriller or mystery, is a better fit for the word scary in this case, then, yeah?
Yeah, those are so much better in my opinion.
Okay, I get it. So, not scary, but something else that has a darker theme. I think I know what to do then. The perfect show for Halloween. Clearly, everyone's got different ideas. So, I guess we'll ask about that. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first ever episode of CCTV. Today, we're going to be doing a Halloween special in collaboration with Torchbearer Games. I reached out to the guys and I asked them, what's the perfect anime for Halloween? And I wanted to see what their views were on the question and see what options they gave. And so that's what we have here today. We have 5 different picks of pretty varied, pretty different anime with different genres and different tags that all fit that theme for Halloween. That would be a pretty ideal watch depending on your tastes. So we're going to go through them all and give some recommendations and tell you a little bit about them. I hope you enjoy it. First of all, this is my take. I want to preface that I aim to give as few spoilers as possible when discussing shows or suggesting anything for people to watch. However, with the theme of the question and the show that I've picked, I don't believe that it's possible to talk about it in the scope of the question without giving spoilers due to the twists in the show's narrative. So, with that being said, if you don't wish to have the show revealed for what it is, and the twist from that show, or at least the first episode revealed, then please skip to the next segment of the video that will be posted here before I continue. Now that those who don't want to see any spoilers regarding the show that I've picked have gone, I've decided that for my personal pick of what I would suggest as something to binge on Halloween, I thought about what Halloween is in the modern day, and came to the conclusion that everyone's tastes are different. And whilst something scary may be an option, sometimes you want to watch something that is a little bit light-hearted or that has a light-hearted feel to it. That is why my choice is School Live, or by the original Japanese title, Gakugarashi. A unique take on the slice of life genre written by Norimitsu Kaiho as a manga in May of 2012 until its conclusion in November 2019, and getting an anime adaptation by Lerch Studios in July of 2015. It tells the story of 4 girls, their teacher, and a dog as they spend their days living at school as part of the Living at School Club. The central story focuses on the main character, Yuki Takea, a happy-go-lucky girl who just wants to live her best life and enjoy everything that school has to offer. Her bright personality and the ability to light up the room and have fun on any occasion is something that becomes a strong theme and focus of the show, whilst the reality is the world isn't as happy as she makes it out to be, and the true story reveals itself to be a tale about how she is coping with the horrifying world around her through delusions and psychosis. The trauma of the world collapsing around her was too much, but the effects of her bright demeanour and the ability to keep the others sane in her delusions encourages them to allow her to continue in this way. The juxtaposition of the moe aesthetic of the main cast on the backdrop of the apocalyptic world around them, and the contrast of seeing the world from the eyes of Yuki and then having it spun on its head to see it from the eyes of the other cast members, gives you a strong sense of how in reality such events could affect anyone. And the usual trope of strong leads who take charge in the face of a destroyed world head on in most apocalyptic genres isn't always needed to create a feeling of horror to the viewer. That being said, the atmosphere isn't just created by the visuals or the themes. The sound of the show also plays a major part. The slow, climbing symphony that plays in sync with the girls' dark moments dealing with their lives, and the cold winds, silence and gritty ambience lingering behind the fun club activities keeps you expecting something to happen at any point, constantly keeping you in the shoes of the rest of the cast who live in reality and understand the dangers they face constantly, as opposed to the ever oblivious and ditzy Yuki who continues about her life without ever taking note of any of the catastrophic events around her. School Live offers a deep look into the psychological effects of trauma and how it can affect anyone in any way. It's not just Yuki that is hit by these kinds of things. The other cast members all have their own stories, own feelings, own things that have happened to them, and they deal with it in their own different ways. Kurumi, for example, took it on herself after dealing with her own trauma to be the one who faces the dangers of the world so that others don't have to, carrying around her signature shovel at all times, ready to step in and fight and protect those she cares about. I could go on and talk about each member of the main cast and how each of them deals with their own traumas in their own ways, or how their personalities affect the others, but I want to leave that to you to enjoy the show and experience it for yourself as you learn about each of them in each new episode. So instead, I'll move on and I'll talk a little bit about the show's intro, which is also worth noting. Though for a far more in-depth analysis, I would suggest visiting the MothersBasement channel for their take on the opening. To summarise, however, the opening, Friendshitai, is an ever-changing visual representation of the direction of the show. The first episode takes a unique approach, ensuring that the opening has no spoilers revealing the truth behind the show's nature, and this theme continues throughout, as only once something has been revealed in the show can you tell there has then been a change to the opening. For example, with the background of the opening slowly descending from a bright, cheerful blue to a mist-coloured yellow and finally to a dark, eerie red, showing that as each episode comes to a conclusion, the story is developed more and more into that darker state, contrasting its original first episode where everything is bright and cheery and it just seems like that everyday normal slice of life show. Finally, I think before I talk too much about the show, I want to suggest reading it. If you find that you enjoy it, the manga is finished and there is even a live adaptation created, though we're only going to focus on the anime in this case. It was worth mentioning that if you want more, the options there. I think the show perfectly encapsulates what modern Halloween is, and I think that whilst it is most definitely not the most perfect show to watch for Halloween, it is undoubtedly a binge-worthy watch for the spooky season that encapsulates what Halloween is. So I guess if you skipped ahead to this point, I'm sorry you wasn't able to listen to my take, but choosing some of these shows and trying to keep it spoiler-free, that's the unfortunate situation that happens sometimes. Next up, we have the other half of CCTV. This is Kay and his take.
My name's Kay, and I'll be running you through my top anime pick for the spooky season, Sankarea. This is one of those shows that not everybody would readily recommend, but seeing as this is for Halloween purposes, it's a lot easier. This will be aimed towards viewers that need to saturate their hunger for anime with something new. Now, as for why this would fit into the Halloween category, it's easy. You have to think zombie obsessions, comedy, and mystery. The setting and atmosphere they create, as opposed to solely horror-type shows within the anime world narratives, deliver, in my opinion, the better experience. As for the reason why I think horror shows tend to need something extra to be able to deliver a satisfying experience, well, unless you're a person that watches solely for the gore, to me horror needs to scare you And I feel like that is especially hard within an anime compared to its live action counterpart, simply because I tend to have an easier time imagining that a live action horror setting has a more realistic feel to it. Like in, for example, the movie Saw. I watched that at home on the couch, and it managed to jump scare me. The last time I remember being jump scared in an anime was, well, never. So, if you're like me, and you can't really be invested in horror shows within the anime narratives, we have to find our fix somewhere else. This is why I opted for a more mystery-esque show with some comedy in there for good measure. As far as the story goes, it tells us something about a young boy named Chihiro who has a strange hobby, or rather a fascination with zombies. Along the way, you quickly come to realize that it's actually like a full-blown obsession. The setting revolves around comedic scenes with a touch of genius. It's as if it was set up to be a Halloween troupe in and of itself, like being the proud owner of an undead cat. As the story continues on and he gets to meet like the main female character, Ria, they somehow end up living together, which leads into even more ridiculous scenes, but all the while having like a darker undertone which defines the show's true nature. You don't get to know a lot about the characters at the start, which induces the feeling of mystery, and information gaps are like the main things that will be pulling you back to watch the next episode. Undoubtedly, though, after you've seen the anime, you'll have a few questions left here and there, which are best answered by reading the manga, which I highly recommend doing. Hattori Mitsuru, the author of Sankarea, hasn't done many works, but this one in particular is actually a great read. Well worth your time if you even remotely enjoyed watching the anime. For a piece done between 2009 and 2014, this definitely flew under the radar for most, because in that time period, a lot of popular manga had been in the works, so it didn't get the attention it deserved. For the people that are interested in knowing the studio behind Sankarea, it's done by Studio Dean. They're well known, but have mixed results when it comes to quality. They have their high quality animation works like the movie Fate Stay Night, Unlimited Blade works, and their lower end cost creations like Konosuba. But one thing is for sure, they make enjoyable animes to watch overall. Anyway, I hope you all have a great time during the spoopy season and manage to get your anime fix with one of our recommendations. Peace.
I never would have thought of Sankarea as a pick, with it being such an outlier of a show and one that a lot of people slept on, but a great pick nonetheless, and that's the whole point of this show. Next, we have the first of the Torchbearer guys, Axel.
Hi, hello. I'm Axel, and thanks, Cap. I want to say thanks for hitting me up for this. This is a really cool idea. So, Cap said something about wanting suggestions for anime to binge for Halloween, and I kind of have to preface that by saying I don't really like horror anime much, so I went with something a little outside the horror genre, but that's still thrilling, I would say, and intriguing and mysterious. So I went with the anime Boogie Pop wa Waranai, which I'm going to butcher that Japanese, but it also stands for Boogie Pop and Others. And the first thing that's very important to know about this is there's actually two of this anime. The first one was made back in 2000, and the second new adaptation was last year in 2019. Both of them, though, are by Studio Madhouse, which means they're both very good. That said, they're different. The original 2000 version is an anime original story, but that doesn't actually make it bad. It's just not a good adaptation of the plotlines from the source material, but given the source material is very episodic and has very disparate plotlines, it works very well for introducing the universe of the stories. Whereas the 2019 version is a more true adaptation of the light novels, which this is sourced from. And as an interesting aside, for anybody who doesn't know this, Boogie Pop Phantom light novels were actually not originally known as light novels. Boogie Pop series is actually known for starting the light novel concept in Japan. So that's an interesting side point. But either way, both of them are a good, solid place to start Boogie Pop if you're interested in the concept, which we'll get to. But the original is 12 episodes, the 2019 is 18 episodes. I'm going to be focused on the 2019 version for a few reasons. Mostly because it's newer, the art's prettier, the animation's smoother, it has Aoyuki playing the main character, and it has an OP by Myth and Royd, so you can never go wrong there. So I'm going to focus on that one. The reason I chose it, as I said, is because I'm not a big fan of horror, but Boogie Pop is thriller incarnate. This is a story that's steeped in mystery and intrigue. It's centered around this mysterious urban legend known as the Boogie Pop, that is this creature that stalks the urban sprawl hunting down monsters. And the story centers around the interactions between urbanite teens in Tokyo and these strange beings that are inhuman. So you can see why this would fit the theme of something to watch and binge around Halloween. The plot of Boogie Pop is broken up into short arcs, centering around different occurrences within the world and the plot. Not every plot even involves the titular Boogie Pop, but they do all weave together into a larger story, which is important. And that's part of why I suggest this show specifically for binging, is because of the arcs. The arcs are done in such a way that if you only watch a few episodes and then stop, it's very unsatisfying because you don't get the full picture of what you're getting into until you watch the full arc in one contiguous go. So this is definitely a show that is worth binging because you'll get the larger mystery all in one big splat. That said, it is 18 episodes and the plots center around usually 4 to 6 episodes apiece. So if you need to take breaks between, do so. It's a lot. Now, I don't want to go on too much about the plot because I don't want to ruin it. It's like I said, it's very mysterious. It's a very intrigue-driven plot line centered around these people and these kids and these mysterious beings. But I will say it is definitely a show that's not for everyone. It does have a bit of gore and some violence and unpleasant things happening to people. That's usually what urban legends are like. But this is something to watch around Halloween, so I kind of expect you to think that might happen in these kind of shows. Now, another important note, and the thing I'm going to close with, is that Boogie Pop and Others, the anime adaptation, is just a drop in the bucket. If you like this show after binging it, I highly suggest you to look into the light novels. There are 14 light novels currently printed in this series, and many of them are translated in English. So if you like the world and the characters, give them a read. That's all I really have to say about it. It's a really good show. It's mysterious and intriguing and fascinating, honestly. And the character work in it is fantastic, especially in the 2019 adaptation. The one thing I will say for the 2000 adaptation, if you decide to watch both, the soundscape in the 2000 adaptation is phenomenal. Like, very few anime do sound work quite as well as that show. But other than that, check it out. If you like both of them, give the books a read. And thanks for listening. Thanks for including me, Cap. I guess that's all I have to say. Stay cool.
I remember watching Boogie Pop on the January release in 2019, and I can definitely agree with that one statement. It is thriller incarnate. A great choice by Axel. And now for the other half of his duo, Verdun.
Hello there, I'm Verdun, and I'm here to give you a special treat this Halloween. One that you'll either love or you'll hate. Vatican Kiseki Chosakan, or Vatican Miracle Examiner, by J.C. Staff. A mystery anime that follows a pair of Vatican priests, Roberto Nicolaus and Hiraga Joseph Ko, in their world-hopping adventures as part of an organization called the Seat of the Saints, which investigates the validity of miracles, circumstances around them, and the corruption that hides underneath, both the literal and spiritual kind, often dealing with murder, the influences of the devil, and the crisis of faith. All with a moody and dark style and a soundtrack that gives it a spooky and suspenseful feeling. All this sounds interesting, right? Well, the thing is, the show is actually hot garbage. But in the best way. The so bad it's good way. And it's kind of a favorite because of that, because I enjoy some good schlock. It's a rarity. If an anime is bad, it's just bad or stupid, just boring. You don't often get something that toes the line, and I'm sure you're wondering, like, what do you mean when you say it's garbage? And that's honestly a difficult question to answer, because I really don't want to spoil anything. That would ruin the point of my recommendation. But let's say you write a serious and spooky mystery story. You try to theme it like The Exorcist or something. And then you mix in a nice little dollop of anime. Genius main characters that solve any problem, sometimes making big leaps of logic with that. Through man service and BL bait, bad pacing, and bizarre plots, and then you play it completely straight-faced. It's gonna come off as a bit comedic. Now I'll say it's a bit more subtle, but having not grown up Catholic, nor really in a church-going family, the pomp and circumstance of old Catholic ceremonies always seemed a little bizarre to me. No offense, of course, but it's only really made worse when you add cool anime action shots to it. The first arc alone is a masterpiece. you're gonna watch anything in the show, watch the first 4 episodes. Then you can decide if it's worth watching the other 2 arcs. Aside from its flaws, though, this show is actually stylistically very nice. It's got quality art, animation, and sound. And as mentioned earlier, it's very moody and dark. In some ways, the art style actually gives it a certain unearthly quality at times, especially during more supernatural parts. And that's alongside a solid OST with a diverse mix of songs that includes a lot of chants and hymns, mixed with driving orchestrals and other unique pieces. It's a 2-disc set for the OST, and it's almost an hour and 45 minutes long for a 12-episode show. But it's always present, setting a strong mood in all the scenes. If anything, if you're not interested in this, go find the OST and enjoy it. But all this, including its dynamic cinematography, if you will, in tandem gives it a feeling of a horror show, despite not being one of its tags. A lot of work clearly went into making this a good show, but it's a shame it didn't turn out how they wanted. Well, not a shame for me, though. And none of this is to say that the mysteries are actually bad. They can be interesting and thought-provoking. But this is, of course, before they go off the rails down some bizarre conclusion and pacing gives you narrative whiplash. It really just lacks self-awareness as to its style and tone versus its cheesy story beats. It gives a comedic gap. And this is all, of course, speaking of the show. I've never looked into the light novel series myself, but it started in 2007 and it's still going. Almost 1 million copies sold, 13 volumes and 2 manga adaptations. Source might just be good. The concept sounds interesting to you, but you're not interested in the issues of the adaptation? Maybe check it out. I'm not sure if it's out in English, translated anywhere, but if it all sounds right up your alley, give the show a try. It's on Prime Video. Maybe get 30-day trial, watch this heap, then watch Vinland Saga and Oni Hate too. I'm just happy to share this obscure piece. I exposed my friends to the first arc in preparation for this, and it was a joy to see his reaction. There's just so many lines in the show that I think to myself, I can't believe this is actually being said in an anime. The shock of it seeing this 3 years ago initially, it still has stuck with me this whole time. It's great. It's awful. Try it. But thank you, Cap, for letting me do this and allowing me to spread the word of an old favorite trash fire. I hope you guys have a happy Halloween.
Now, I have to admit, I'd never heard of this show before this video, and after hearing this recommendation and giving it a little watch whilst making, I'll just say, he's not wrong. So with that, that's all for personal picks for our choices for Halloween. There's one more, however. Finally, myself and Kay want to give you our pick for the perfect animated bin for Halloween. Whilst we have, with the guys from Torchbearer's Gaming, given you some shows to watch that we personally think are great binge watchers, and generally just great animes to watch overall, we agreed that one show stood above the rest as the top choice to watch for Halloween. With a long history behind its name and several versions of its story being told since its conception by Go Nagai all the way back in 1972, we are of course talking about the critically acclaimed 2018 Netflix series by Science Saru, Devilman Crybaby.
As a studio, Science Saru has a lot less experience under their belt compared to other giants in the playing field. The amount of works they've done are fairly limited in number. On the other hand, the works they did produce were all really well received, with shows like Japan Sinks or the immensely popular Keep Your Hands Off Izoken, that's being hailed by many as the best anime show of 2020. Needless to say, they have a few things going for them. However, that's not how it all started. From humble beginnings in 2013, founder Masaki Yuasa started Science Saru because of an offer they had received from Cartoon Network to work on the Adventure Time episode Food Chain. This offer would get the ball rolling a bit for the company, but it would take them another year before working on a big project for themselves. So in 2014, they finally got involved with Ping Pong the Animation, which for a brand new studio was unheard of success. And as you can see, it was really well received. From there, they would slowly get to pick up a few smaller projects and help other studios make anime openings like Garo the Animation. But sadly for them, nothing would really catch on in this time period, and it wouldn't be until much later in 2017 that they would get to work on something substantial again. The movie Lu Over the Wall is a good example of a project Yuasa would get his hands on, and while that was a decent success, he strikes gold in 2018 with none other than Devilman Crybaby.
Written in July of 1972, the original story of Devilman is a little different from its modern iteration. With an almost 50-year-long history behind it, Devilman has seen success in several forms of media, from its first serialization as a manga through to its following 8 more iterations, spin-offs and short stories, several animes and crossovers, as well as a movie and even a live action to boot. It has made its mark in anime history as one of the long-standing greats of its time. The original anime, back in 1972, followed a more toned-down story, derived from Toei Animation, the studio at the time, wanting a more viewer-friendly show based on Go Nagai's previous work, Demon Lord Dante. The manga, however, held no such restrictions, and the story was told differently, with a much darker adult tone behind it. There is a lot that can be said about the history of Devilman, but I wanted to touch upon this aspect in particular, as the direction and dark graphic detail that Crybaby encapsulates is what series director Masaaki Yuasa stated he was aiming for. According to him, Crybaby is what he believes Nagai would have created if he was not constrained by the shonen demographic 50 years ago. The show is an updated retelling of the original manga series, taking the series as a whole and thrusting it into the modern age, whilst keeping as faithful as possible to the original story and its themes. The series became an instant success, being spoke about on social media and generating memes and parodies due to the eccentric visual representation of the changes the characters face when shown in demon or human form. The most famous of these memes being created from the show being the Running in the 90s meme, generating millions of views on its YouTube video worldwide. And whilst these memes and parodies did bring a lot of attention to the show, it also gave a lot of people the wrong idea about the quality and style of its animation, discouraging plenty of people from taking the opportunity to see it.
Among Masaki Yuasa fans, weirdly shaped characters and movement is something completely normal. However, if you only just now heard of the man from us, it would come as no surprise if you think his art style is shocking. His animation style is abstract, with the trippy visuals favoring expressiveness over accuracy. His fanbase has even started giving certain iconic scenes from the Devilman show names to fit the animation style that he has. For example, Devilman Dash. It's a term that goes around to describe the inhuman way that Akira, one of the main characters of the show, is running. And honestly, the silliness is so fitting because with influences from the likes of OKKO, Tex Avery cartoons, and even Wallace and Gromit, it manages to give Devilman Crybaby a retro aesthetic. Combine this with the modern day setting that it has, and it feels like the anime is stuck in the 70s. It manages to bring back like an early work of genius and retell it in such a way that it's refreshing to see. The nuances hinting that something may be wrong all the time whilst managing to keep the flow of the entire show as if it all fits together is one of the reasons why Crybaby received so much critical acclaim.
The story of Devilman Crybaby, like other iterations of the Devilman franchise, follows the progressive journey of Akira Fudo as he becomes the titular character Devilman. An emotionally empathetic boy who will put everyone else before himself and cry for others, but never for himself. Akira is the epitome of good-natured and kind with a strong sense of justice that attracts the attention and friendship of Ryo Asuka. Ryo is the direct opposite of Akira, contrasting his kind nature with a cold and uncaring one. Everything about both of these characters' outward appearance contradicts their personalities. Akira wears dark clothes and is often depicted as shadowed and brooding, whilst Ryo, on the opposite side, is bright and approachable, completely opposing their inner personalities. The third character of note in the series is Akira's lifelong target of affection and love, Miki Makamura, an energetic and sporty girl who he lives with, and the star of their school's track and field team. She is often depicted as kind-hearted and trusting of others regardless of how they appear, with the only exception shown to this being her reaction to Ryo upon their first encounter. It is Akira's unwavering love for Miki that allows him to keep his human heart intact when he transforms into Devilman, and it is his hope for a brighter future along with this that lets him fight without restraint against those who threaten it. Each of the characters in the show have their own strong personality traits, each having some sort of motive or plan that is hinted to through their actions and through the show's use of themes and symbolism.
And as this show will make it no secret where they draw inspiration from, it should come as no surprise that it dives headfirst into religion, in particular mainstream Christianity. The frequent uses of crosses in the show, combined with the underlying story that is used to reveal bits and pieces of the plot, really become apparent early on when one of the show's main plot events comes to fruition at a so-called Sabbath party. This ends up leading into one of the most famous chapters from the Bible, aptly named the Apocalypse. However, while this event is slowly unfolding, other symbolic themes come up as well, like heroism, a situation where humanity did not ask for a hero but was granted a defender nonetheless, even if he is despised. For a symbol so pure of heart to be seen as the bad guy within the show's narrative is almost heartbreaking. And considering this whole ordeal happens because of racial implications just adds insult to injury. Regardless, the show does an extremely good job at mixing in all sorts of feelings together at times, and that is especially because of how the music is used.
Very few shows manage to find ways to use music in a natural setting of their runtime, and even fewer still find ways to do it repeatedly using the same styles of music. Devilman Crybaby is one of those rare, exceptional pieces where not only is the music modern and fit into the theme of the show, but it gives a retro feeling. The pumping rhythm of the EBM 80s style tracks playing in various scenes through cars, speakers, and phones, subtly building up the tension of scenes whilst fitting naturally into the background, is exceptional. The mastermind behind the music of Crybaby is Kensuke Ushio, who has worked on music for other works by Sankarea, such as Ping Pong and Japan Sinks, as well as composing for other popular works such as A Silent Voice and Space Dandy. They made sure to find the right man for the job to create the perfect atmosphere. With that being said, I think we've spent a lot of time talking about all the different aspects of what makes Crybaby an amazing show, but we need to take a moment to talk about why you should watch it. As mentioned earlier, one of the main focuses that we have is to make sure not to give spoilers as much as possible when talking about any shows. And with Devilman Crybaby being a short 10 episodes, it's easy to do so. That being said, only being 10 episodes, it has a short runtime, perfect for binging in a single sitting, taking up a total time of roughly 4 hours, start to finish. With a huge pedigree to back it up, Devilman Crybaby has the right level of suspense, mystery and horror placed into a tiny package to enjoy, and best of all, the voice acting is top quality in both the sub and dub without either taking much away from the atmosphere of the show. Speaking of the voice acting for a second, the most noticeable thing for myself when watching the show, specifically in the sub, was the broken English lines being a bit much, but that is easily ignored in the whole scheme of things when taken into context of the show.
I actually feel the same way about the dub and the sub versions. It comes down to preference in the end. Both are really solid though, so you can't go wrong either way. In any case, we hope you enjoyed our top anime pick for Halloween, and if you liked our video and want to see more content like this in the future, consider dropping a like and subscribe.